Hello, everybody. Tom, how you doing?
Charlie, doing well. How are you?
I'm fine. And my name is Charlie Velázquez from Rugby in Florida, founder and CE everything of all you see on Rugby FL, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and this podcast. I also
And I
do a lot of
just
it. I also do a lot of the videos you see all year round, mostly for South Florida teams.
and I
And
just show
Tom,
up. I get harassed into co-hosting with you. Is that it?
well, Tom Ciampa is a referee loved by everybody, pretty much. He is mostly known for being doing that all the time. So we had enough rugby today with the World Cup. Let's not talk about that in case we give
No
us some
spoilers,
more.
Charlie. We agreed.
What brings us today here is, as we did last week, we are presenting the candidates for new positions at the Florida Rugby Union's AGM next week in Okeechobee. And in this case, it's for VP of College. We have to sort of initially, I just have to sort of put things in context, but maybe I'm gonna ask the current VP to do that, which is signing on right now, because initially we had one position to fill for all college teams, men and women, and then we found out that there's gonna be an amendment to the bylaws and create two positions, which sort of makes more sense. For that matter, I would like to bring in Jessie. I'm not sure if she's ready. Yes, she is. Okay. Hi, Jessie. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Nice to see you.
You as well.
Sorry if we had a little miscommunication about, but you made it.
It's okay.
Great. So I want to just initially sort of present this current situation as far as how college is organized within the rugby union.
Okay. And within Florida specifically, or USA
Yeah,
rugby?
just Florida.
Okay.
No.
I mean, it's pretty similar to everything else. We have the college men and the college women, and then each has the college women have D1 and D2, and then the college men are in the FCC, the Florida Collegiate Conference, and then they play. The college women play spring matrix season and have the friendlies in the fall. And then I believe the college men, actually, I don't know, to be honest. I know they play sevens mostly in the fall, and then they have their championship in spring. And they all play we didn't have the FCC until a couple years ago. We had the college men, they were spread out a bit more previously, like in other states.
So you don't really, as VP of college currently, you don't really take care of the men.
So back when I took the position in 2017, I did a lot more hands-on with the college men. And then once the FCC, like once we got all the college men to come back in to Florida, pretty much Kirk and Evan like took over the college men. The teams that weren't like in the FCC a lot, which were like Eckerd and I think Florida Gulf Coast and Embry-Riddle. Not Embry-Riddle. What's the Ave Maria?
Ave Maria as well.
Those were like, because they were in NSCRO previously, so those three like were out initially. So I dealt with them a bit more, and then once they got into the FCC, pretty much, yeah, I mostly deal with the college women for the most part. But as far as like on paper, yes, I'm the college men and women. But the past couple of years, that's been most of the college women.
So you know what? As we have you, we're gonna get into the guys just in a minute.
Okay.
Can you give us a little bit of an update of what has been going on with the women's college, basically since the pandemic, because they have had some issues, and so
yeah,
can you sort of bring us up to date?
Sure.
What's going on? Some programs have sort of left for good, apparently. Others are struggling. So give us an overview of what has been going on with the women in these past 2 or 3 years.
So before COVID, there were a little bit of struggles to begin with for a lot of the college women's clubs. And then when COVID hit, like that really just kind of screwed them. The ones that were like already struggling, it just made it even worse, unfortunately. So clubs that we really don't have anymore, FAU, they tried again last year to reform, and they said we can't do it, unfortunately. So they're completely disbanded. FGCU, I think, disbanded pretty early in the pandemic, or it was even before that. They haven't been a club a while. And then the strong clubs and the active ones are UCF, UF, FSU, and Eckerd. And then the clubs that are like rebuilding are USF, FIU, and UM.
Yep. And the clubs that are struggling, is there a general theme? Is it players? Is it coaches? Field space?
So I was on the board at USF when I went to USF, and so I have a little bit of experience with like how to deal with club sports in college. And honestly, like the schools are a huge boundary and a barrier sometimes. And there's all the eligibility rules that clubs have to go through. And then I know at USF, they have like this kind of report card for the sport club, and they're so picky on the rules, and it's gotten even worse. So I would say number one issue is like the schools themselves. Sometimes they're not, for some of them, or for some reason, are not super friendly with rugby. So I know that's been a big struggle. And I had a call with some of the college clubs recently and with the women, and it seemed like a lot of them didn't have a good connection with their men's clubs. And I think the clubs that are successful have a good connection with the men's clubs. So I think that's a bit of a barrier. And then the other thing is you're dealing with college students that eventually are going to graduate in 4 years. And these college clubs are, for the most part, ran by the students. And you have to have passionate students that are willing to do the work because it's not paid, obviously. Plus you have your schoolwork and everything else you're dealing with. So if you don't have a strong executive board and leadership, and if you don't have one for years because people graduate, then the club just falls apart. So I would say that's like probably the biggest one also.
They need to learn how to keep that structure going on every season and like getting the new guys to fit in.
Yeah, it's passing it on is the big thing. You know, you got a great president or whoever, and then that person doesn't pass it on to someone that's a freshman that can do it for 4 more years. It's a problem.
I have seen some of those elections when they get at the end of the practice and they say, okay, we're going to elect the match secretary. Yeah. Who wants to be match secretary? And everybody's like, well, I don't know. Okay, yeah, you're going to be the match secretary. And it's clueless.
Yep.
But
it's hard.
Yeah.
I get it.
It is.
But it's hard.
Let's bring in our other guest. Andy Villareal from St. Thomas University. How are you doing, Andy?
All good, Charlie. How about you?
Nice to have you. Doing well. And Mr. Kirk Swanner, the current FCC commissioner with an upgraded background, looking actually pretty nice. I mean,
just for you, Charlie. Like Kirk. Just for you.
I appreciate your efforts. So Kirk, maybe you can give us a little brief history of how the FCC came to be, because before the FCC, the situation was different. And so tell us a little about how this came to be.
Just real quick, Jesse, how long have you been in your position? You're the longest tenured executive member, correct?
2017.
Okay. Yeah, so back in 2011 is when the college conference whole system started. And so prior to the FCC, you had University of Florida in the SCRC, which is the Southeastern Collegiate Rugby Conference. And then you had the bulk of the rest of the teams in the SIRC, the South Independent Rugby Conference. So prior to that system, you had South D1, which had like D1, D2, which is much more aligned with what we're doing now, where the colleges were direct members of the union. So the union had Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. The Division 1 teams played in a South-wide D1 conference, which had LSU, Clemson, Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, a lot of really good Southeastern programs. And then you had the Division II, which played their local LAU conference, and then very similar where you have your regional championships and then your national championships, all that type of stuff. And then back about 2011 is when the conferences started. So a lot of the colleges were upset because they weren't really getting services from the TU, which is the territorial union, which is the U.S. Rugby South, which was back in the day. This is before the reorganization to the GU system, right? So back in the day, we had TUs and LAUs, and Florida was an LAU, local area union. And then when the conferences split off, you also had the territorial union reorganization. So now Florida is a GU, geographic union, which reports directly to USA Rugby, not to the USA Rugby South like it did in the past. So a bunch of the conferences were off in these, a bunch of the colleges were off in these conferences. And so the problem is that the South Independent Rugby Conference was teamed up with a bunch of teams in North Georgia and Tennessee. And so the macro schedule, what I call the macro schedule, is when you play your competitive 15 season. It started off in the spring, and then it moved to half fall, half spring, and then it moved to the fall. And so Florida, being half of the conference, didn't have a full say in what happened. And so my idea was to bring all the college conferences, all the college teams back into one conference, back under the FRU umbrella. So that's where the FCC started up back in, 2018? So the 17-18 year?
Hey, man, if you don't know, come on.
This is year 5, or this is the start of year 6. And that includes COVID. So when the FCC started, it was just D1 AA. If you don't know what these acronyms and stuff mean, it's a long history. But D2 or the NSCRO teams, National Small College Rugby Organization teams, which then rebranded to NCR. That was not really part of the FCC. Those guys were standalone teams. And that's what, Jesse, you probably dealt with more so, right, was the NSCRO teams, not really the D1 AA teams when they're off in their conferences. And this is why in the bylaws you see the associate member status, because the colleges had to be associate members with the FRU to gain access to the Florida Referee Association, because the conferences didn't have their own referees. So now with the colleges being full members, because prior to the colleges leaving in 2011, there used to be two college VPs, one for men and one for women.
Okay. So it sounds like a long, complicated history as to how we got where we are.
Yeah, basically, I think the split off from the conferences was short-sighted, and so I really wanted, to me, rugby is an ecosystem in Florida, and the colleges are an important cog in the ecosystem because it's important that all levels of rugby in Florida flourish. And I think we need more bridges between the high school into the college and the college and the men. That way, our retention rates aren't so bad. USA Rugby did do a retention rate study, and the retention rate from high school to college is only like 10%, and then from college to men is also like 10%. So the retention rate from high school into the men's game is like 1%. So.
Kirk, I'm gonna have to mute you while you are not speaking because there's a lot of echo. Okay, just so you know. Okay. So Tom, we have to mention that we had invited, and they were supposed to come. They may still come. 2 other candidates for this position. One is James Woolcombe-Clark from Eckerd College, and the other one is Matt Guest from Florida Atlantic University. They may still show up, but I just wanted to disclose that we invited everybody.
Everyone gets equal airtime opportunity on the pod.
No. Screw that.
It's the premier showcase of Florida rugby in Florida.
Oh, yes, that's true. That is true. So let's move on and sort of go around with the candidates we have. The first thing we would like to is for them to give a little assessment of last season. How do you guys think it what things went well and what things could be improved from last season? Andy, if you want to start.
So from last season, from my perspective, there were a couple things that went right. I mean, you guys were able to introduce a new team in a small amount of time into the competition. I'm talking about us at St. Thomas. And something that went wrong, I think, for example, the games against they could never really get people to travel to their games. So that means the teams in D2 had less games than they should have. So we didn't get that much field experience for the kids.
Let's make a little disclosure, which is that you guys, along with Ave Maria, and Eckerd, played actually not under the FCC, but under the Florida Rugby Union Division 4. You had
Correct.
your own little conference. It was not just so people understand from last year what was going on. I'm talking about, yeah. So you had a different experience, of course, than the teams that were playing for the FCC.
Correct.
Kirk, you want to give us a little bit of your overview of last season?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, from the FCC D1 AA perspective, it was the best season to date. We had the most amount of games. 50% of the games were 7 points or less or something like that. The score line, as a commissioner, what I look at is score line differentials. You know, the more closer games we have, the more parity there is in the league, the more parity, the more fun the games are for the players because they can personally have a bigger impact on the outcome of the game. So the score lines in more of the games were tighter, which was fantastic to see. I would say from the guys in D2 is unfortunate. I would say the one mistake I've made, probably the biggest mistake I've made as a commissioner, is not foreseeing the growth of Eckerd and St. Thomas earlier and instituting this move from 7 teams to 5 teams a year late. So in hindsight, I'd rather have done what we're doing next spring, this spring.
Okay, we're going to talk about that because we haven't talked about that. That is maybe I just want to mention from my perspective also, you are totally right. It was a really exciting tournament to follow because games were very close. Tom, I guess you got to ref some of those games, right?
I had a handful of games. I had the D2 state final between St. Thomas and Eckerd. That was a good match as well.
Oh, they were both finals were really exciting.
There were 7 of those in the game.
Yeah, you had a lot of those, right? Yeah.
I almost had a couple heart attacks.
And the other thing I want to mention, because I think it's very, it was a great thing to have, were the video streamings. Everybody could watch the games. It was a little bit at the beginning not that good, but it got better as a season. And I think that was a very big accomplishment. I know the team for that, so they made the effort.
That was a big another big step we took forward was having the league-wide games being videoed professionally and then also being shared. So the other great thing about the FCC is that there's a lot of cooperation amongst the coaches. A lot of talking amongst themselves about strategies, this, that, and the other. Like, they don't give away their playbook, but they do ask, how do you implement this? If I want to do this in a drill, or if I want to implement this week, what are some ideas, this, that, and the other. So there's a lot of cooperation. And then the video, I think, was a really big step forward because then it allowed teams to scout. So it made them much more competitive, much more closer to.
Because I have to say, I do a lot of videos, as everybody knows, and without exception, every single team does not want the full game to be posted. I post the highlights because I put that into my contract. But nobody wants their games to be seen. And I think, if it's only one team doing it, I sort of understand it. But everybody's taping the games pretty much. And I think it's generally speaking, for everybody, it's better if everybody could watch the games. But that is how it's going. So I'm going to put on the screen this graphic now that shows what this season is going to look like. And this is a unique season, correct? Because next season, I don't know exactly how it's going to be, but it's not going to be exactly like this.
Yeah, and Charlie, just so we can talk this through, this is a kind of a one-time transition for next year to help divide the teams you see on the left of the regular season. We're going to start with 7 teams in D1 and 4 teams in D2. And then on the right, this is how we get to the seedings for a 5 and 6 team bracket, respectively.
Yeah,
it took me about 10 minutes of staring at this thing to figure out how we get there, but I'll just clear that up for anybody watching.
Yeah, maybe Kirk, this is what you guys agreed to do for this season at your meeting, right?
Right. Yeah. Because previously, another thing about the FCC that we did differently was that we operated in 2-year cycles. Because prior to the season, the competitive season format would change every year. And so people would get upset because, hey, I traveled to this team last year. I'm not getting my return trip, blah, blah, blah. So when we started the FCC, one of the key components was that when we create a schedule format, we're sticking to it for 4 years. So you get the return match the second year. So we're 5 years into the conference. We had 2 before COVID, then we had COVID, and then we had 2 post-COVID. So this is a one-off schedule. That is correct. And so, yeah, at our summit meeting we had over the summertime, where the college teams, the 7 FCC D1 AA teams got together, we agreed that we're going to go from a 17 conference down to a 5-team conference, because the other option was looking at bringing St. Thomas and Eckerd College up, expanding to a 9-team. But the issue, if you go to a 9-team conference, is what happens with Ave Maria in Miami. So, like if you're in governance and you have to take, as a commissioner, you got to take care of everybody. You got to take into account the repercussions of your decisions. So this is a one-off schedule going from 7 down to 5.
Yeah, and to wait, let me.
Yeah, we good.
I'm going to try to quickly explain basically how this works. We start with these 7 teams in D1, 4 and D2. At the end of the season, the 4 top teams from D1, they play the semifinals and finals. We have a winner. Last team from D1, number 7, that team is automatically demoted to D2. And then we have the remaining 5 and 6, which play a game among themselves to be the candidate to play against the winner of the first D2 teams. They play among themselves. So we have one representative of D2 and one of D1, which play that game number 6 here in the middle. And whoever wins that game is going to go to Division 1 and the losers to Division 2. So it could happen that at the end of the season, no team from D2 goes up because they still have to win that last game. And we're going to have 5 teams in D1 and the rest in D2. And we just have to also briefly mention that we probably in D2, as it says here, we may have more teams in D2 this year. And actually, we're going to talk to one of the representatives of one of the new teams that we will probably have. So this is going to change a little bit. Did I get it right, Maurice?
And the other thing about now going to a 5-team Division 1 is that from a schedule standpoint, a double round robin makes it really easy because you get to an 8-game regular season. You don't have everyone go to the playoffs like we currently do. The only reason we go everyone to the playoffs because it's a 17 conference is like the worst place to be at from a schedule creation standpoint. And on a yearly basis, there's going to be promotion relegation. So the top at the end of spring 25, the number 5 team is, if the number 1 team from D2 wants to challenge, there's going to be a challenge match and there's going to be promotion relegation yearly basis.
And then 2024, 2025 playoffs would be a 4-team. Is that correct?
I mean, if you're already doing a double round robin, it's probably just going to be a single. It could be a semifinal final. It could be just a final. You've already played each other twice.
So, Andy, what are your thoughts on this the structure of this season? Is that something that, because you're a candidate and you may be in the office and just a week from now, and I guess as the VP of college, you can do whatever you want, maybe? Is that how it works? I'm not sure, but what are your thoughts on this year's structure and what it leads to?
Yeah, so at first I didn't understand it completely because I didn't get that there was only going to be 5 teams in D1 for the next year. So I didn't understand why there would be a couple of them playing the games below, but now that you explained it this way, it makes a lot of sense. And then to have the following years after do a promotion and relegation. However, did you say, Kirk, that it's going to be a promotion match between the D2 champion and the last team in D1?
I mean, that would be my assumption.
So why wouldn't just be the D1 lower ranking team just go down and the D2 champion just move up, kind of like it would be at any promotion and relegation in every other sports?
I'm personally not in favor of forcing anybody to do anything. You know, like everyone thinks that I'm a dictator of the FCC, but it's actually not the case. Everything we do is by consensus. So to me, one way to do a promotion relegation is to solve it on the field. You know, like let the players on the field handle it, not people not on the field with their political backgrounds, whatever, make decisions. That'd be my rebuttal.
But wouldn't then the rest of the season be proof of that? If they already, like, if you win D2, you already deserve to go up because you won that competition. Why prove it more?
I mean, these are all like now. What's the definition of deserve? You know, we can go deep down the rabbit hole. I mean, that's a topic for another later date or whatever. But yeah, my personal stance, and again, my personal stance doesn't matter. It's what everyone else wants. It's what all the teams in the group want to do. So if the 11 come to a consensus and want to do an automatic promotion relegation, okay, no problem.
That is not your preference.
Yeah, but you know, like, I mean, my preference isn't always what happens.
I know. I'm just asking you because I would be definitely more in favor of number 1 and D2 automatically moves up. Because
I mean, we're splitting hairs here. So great. You know, this is what we're really arguing about. Awesome.
But I mean, the reason being that you play your whole season for that, and so all your effort during the season is you have that prize, to put it some way, you move up. But you're saying no, they should still have one game that will decide that. The way it's happening. Wait. So they may have a great season, they may have great rugby, everything, and then they just lose that one game and they don't move up. I think that's very discouraging. I would leave that in any case for like number 2. Okay, number 2 from Division 2 has a chance if they play against up the side number 4 from or number 5. Yeah, you can do it that way. The last one from Division 1, they can play with second of Division 2. So
my counter argument is that we're basing this argument on the winner of Division 2. But what about from the perspective of the number 5 team in Division 1? Like, what happens if there's so much parity in Division 1 that, like, every team ends up at like 5, like 5-3, 3-5? Like, what happens if like the number 5 team has like a 3-5 season and just barely misses out? Or like, what if it's like down to a point differential? Like, what happens if that top 5 is like really tight? You're trying to say, like, just because that team like has a couple bad bounces, they should automatically be relegated? My personal opinion is that they should have a chance to defend themselves. But again, like, this is small potatoes. If we're going to talk about like the upcoming election, which is for next year, then let's do that. But like we're now a couple minutes in talking about automatic promotion relegation.
But it's an important part of the tournament, isn't it?
I don't know. Let's ask Matt.
I think talking about automatic promotion and relegation in this moment is a little bit of cart in front of the horse stuff, man. It's good to see everybody.
Welcome, Matt. Better late than never.
Yeah. Hey, thank you. Sorry, I had to do practice tonight. It was supposed to be over a little while ago, but here we go.
That's fine. So, Matt, as you just got in, we were talking about how this coming season is set up, and what are your thoughts on this setup that we have?
It is a very workable structure to try to split the teams that we have into workable groups. The idea behind it, Kirk has probably already talked about this, so I'm not going to go a lot into it. I was a part of the meeting that settled on this. The idea is that we have a slightly smaller group of teams that can compete at a slightly higher, hopefully slightly, maybe a lot, but a smaller group of teams that perform a little better than a large group of teams. And then as that large group of teams performs well, they have the opportunity to climb into the upper division. And you're not stressing the higher performing teams having to travel all over the state and play teams that may or may not be able to fill the squad. So we have to solve that problem and address that. And this was the solution that we came up with to do it. I don't want to weigh a whole lot into that at this moment because that's not why I came on here tonight, and I feel like a little bit put on the spot.
Fair enough.
Welcome to the pod, Matt.
Hey, I love it.
But one thing that I think we could transition to here is long-term vision of the FCC and where we want to get to.
Yes.
So Matt, as our most recent guest, what is kind of your long-term vision?
So let's have a smaller group of teams that performs at a slightly higher level than most of the teams in the state. And those guys get to focus their important games against each other. And they don't have to put in a lot of effort to travel all over the state and play teams that may or not be able to fill the squad. And then you still have a nice program, a nice conference or schedule set up for teams that may or may not be great or may not have a lot of people, but they still have a structured season and schedule they can depend on to get some game time. And then as you survive the lower level and prove yourself that you can do that and show up week after week, you'll get better players, your product will improve, and you'll knock on the door to that higher level. So I think the thing that we set up for the FCC for the upcoming years speaks for itself and answers a lot of these questions.
Yeah, so that's happening next year, right?
Yes, that's also a gateway into a long-term strategy with a.
And that was my question. Yeah. What's the long-term vision? Yeah.
The long-term vision is to have a group of 4 to 8 teams that can compete nationally and look good on TV, and then we have a larger group of 8 to 12 teams that really want to be on TV and really want to compete nationally. So they're motivated to join the upper level Florida Conference. Is that a little cleaner?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
That would mean that we need to add more teams. So I want to ask you guys if the topic of adding teams is something that you would, as VP, work hard on, and how would you do it? Exactly how can the union help in a real way for teams to be created? So I'll just go around the room, and Jesse, you can jump in also if you want, whenever you want. So the question is, hey, about creating new teams.
Yeah, and specifically, what can be done from the union? Everyone always wants to say people need to be out there creating teams, but what can the union do, and what can you do as VP? Andy, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. So first of all, absolutely, I think there should be more teams just because that creates more competition, and competition just creates better quality players. So that will be the first thing to be able to grow rugby here in Florida. And like Kirk said, there's not a lot of retention with high school players going into college. I feel like the more teams available in more places in the state would completely help with that.
Okay.
One of the things I think the union could do would be to, I'm standing on the shoulders of your comments here. The youth game is pretty strong in Florida. Yeah. So we should, as a Florida rugby union on the college side, as a VP, we should be able to help connect the talent at the high school level to a suitable college in state instead of losing these players to the colleges in Atlanta. Without throwing any colleges under the bus, there's some other places that have a lot of pull, and we lose our locally grown talent to these other places. So I don't know exactly what it would be, but if I got the job as the VP, that would be one of the things I try to do is focus on keeping local talent local.
So my thoughts, if you're going to start more teams, you got to remove the barrier to entry as much as possible. So some of the biggest barriers to entry are going to be like jerseys. So Like, unless somebody wants to donate their old set of jerseys that we can then give to a startup team and they're wearing some jerseys that don't or off color, if they want to do that, okay, whatever. The biggest thing, though, always when it comes to running a club is going to be administration, right? Like, University of Miami couldn't field teams, which is a disaster, right? Forfeits are the worst things that can happen in a schedule. It's the worst thing that happens because it hurts both teams. So the reason teams forfeit is because there's poor organization, poor administration. So, I'll continue with the podcast talking about, like, the biggest thing you have to change is like mindsets and culture. Like, how do you grow a more robust team? How do you grow a bigger team? What's the mindset you got to do? Like, yes, I don't live in Florida. I live in California. I'm also a referee. So when I go and referee teams like UCLA, UC Santa Barbara, or whoever else, like, I can see what other colleges in other states are doing. Like, how do we get teams no longer charging $200 a year for dues, where like a UCLA is charging $1,200 a year, and like UC Santa Barbara is also over $1,000. Like, what's the mindset we got to change in Florida to get ourselves to the point where we value our own product enough to make people charge, to charge enough for them? Because, a proxy for administration is revenue. So like, we got to get the teams to charge more money, to offer better products, to do more services, that type of stuff. So how do we get more teams? We can wait for more colleges to start up, like Embry-Riddle's starting back up this year, apparently. You got Millennial Atlantic. For me, I've been around in the college game in Florida for quite some time. Like, I think there's going to be a upper limit to how many colleges are going to start up. I do think you will see more small colleges like St. Thomas start up to become varsity, because there's going to be a lot of universities that are going to be struggling for numbers, and they use that as an opportunity to get more to drive enrollment. But like, I think there's going to be an upper limit. So I think another option we should be looking at is going to be U23 teams. I know Matt and I disagree on whether or not U23 teams should be allowed to play against colleges. But, when you look at the enrollment rate for men, it's like well at 50%. So there's so many kids that don't go to college. Like, the cost of education in college is going up. The return is going down. Like, wage stagnation it's been a real thing for quite some time. So there's our statistics saying that enrollment is going to go down. So what do we do for the future? I personally think U23s are a great way for the future, but we're kind of talking a lot about the men's. For the women's game, that is a different beast. That also is going to require a lot of help too. But again, I think all of it comes back to administration. How do you organize? How do you communicate? Like, do you know each other? Does players know each other's names that well? Do you create a positive environment when new kids come out that they want to come back? It's kind of those types of things. And then how do you, as a coach with limited resources, operate a big program? Like, a lot of times, when I grew up, my coach, he wanted to watch everything. So we all stood around forever, and so when I coached, I had 70 kids. You can't coach 70 kids with one person. You got to have everyone active all the time. So you have to relinquish control. So these are all mindset issues that you have to change in order to or understand how to grow larger. So I would say podcast and then communication. And that's how you grow it. But it's a long
The pod is always
he's talking about his podcast, not this one. Right?
Hey, he dropped my name in there, so I think a little clarification, because I've had time to think on that. Well, he's right. We've had a conversation about players who are working toward a degree, right? So they've got a certain level of drive, maybe a certain level of opportunity, but they have to worry about grades. They have to worry about a certain set of things. So if you have a top level, so for the sake of conversation, to make it simpler, I would absolutely agree that I don't want the FCC teams as they stand playing U23 teams. So, but I don't think that it would be fair to me to exclude U23 teams. So a workaround would be let these guys play, but keep them in the lower division if we have a 2-division split. That would be a perfectly workable solution. That gets guys on the field. Yeah, that gives guys on the field, gives them the opportunity to play, and that's all I wanted to say. But I wanted to own that I don't think they should compete at the top level with the college kids, but I don't think we should eliminate them. And the idea that I had was let them play with the D2 or the lower side, whatever that is.
I'm with you there. I don't think the U23 team is going to compete with the top colleges anytime soon. So if that were to happen, we're years away. So we have plenty of time.
Well, we're talking about a division that doesn't really exist, right? I mean,
no, which do you mean?
U23 non-college.
So you guys asked us how we could grow the game in Florida, And we're addressing the question with the acknowledgement that getting everybody to college is not the answer. So we let guys that are that age that want to play under the banner of a U23 club, but we can't give them equivalency to the guys that are searching for degrees. So we let them play against guys in college, but we can't say, hey, they're the same as these guys. They're not any worse or any different to a serious degree. But I think that's the discussion that we were having. And then we brought it up because that's how we get more 22-year-olds in Florida on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I've had this discussion actually with a lot of men's teams about, hey, like you should find value in running U23 teams, but like the men's teams also struggle. You know, like I've had some conversations with a couple of the youth programs. Like this is a way that you can extend your your services to more of the kids to stick around longer to offer U23s, because sometimes these kids don't leave. So like maybe the youth programs is a better way to go to offer the U23s. But I mean, and again, the larger, the reason that it's a 5-6 split is that we need the lower division should always be bigger, right? You need to have a pyramid, right? So in order to have a taller pyramid, you need a wider base. So the more teams we get into Division 2, the more teams we can then go into Division 1, right? Like if we ever get to the point we have 10 teams in Division 1, can we go to 6 teams in if we have 10 in Division 2, can we go to 6 in Division 1? Sure, absolutely. There's no upper limit, but like what Matt was saying, which I completely agree with, is that, when you're at the top in Division 1, like, should you be forced to go and play a team that's like way off the mark? Absolutely not, because they have to spend money, right? All of us have limited time and limited resources. So I think a smaller Division 1 is always going to be better when you have a larger Division 2. That way with Division 2, you can regionalize things, right? You can make more regional travel, which is a more cost-effective way to create a schedule. You can do all sorts of things, you can get creative, blah, blah, blah. But, that's the reason we went to that 5-team for next year. And then, we start growing from there.
What are your thoughts on I just want to talk quickly about the preseason, like the fall. Like right now, what we have in place is the one tournament for FCC for the sevens, the one qualifier. That's all there is. What do you guys think as VPs, if we should be doing something else, or just let the teams like prepare themselves at their own pace, doing friendlies, or the FCC should organize something in the fall?
You want me to start first? Because
let's Andy talk. You talk too much.
For me, I think just doing the FCC playing the sevens is fine, and let the teams do whatever they feel they need to prepare for the actual 15 season. I think that would be that. Like what we have right now, I think is perfect for the preseason.
Okay. Kirk?
Yeah, I don't think the conference or the union should ever be scheduling matches that don't mean anything. So the conference and the union should only be scheduling competitive games that matter for standing. So, like, to me, if you want to do like a preseason tournament all Florida day, it's still preseason. It doesn't really mean anything. I don't think they should be scheduling that either. Now, if we have an all Florida day and people want to show up and get matches, I think that's okay. But to me, let the teams do what they want for the fall. We have the 1-7s. We asked if we wanted to do a multiple series, and the response was no. Like we've done, I've been running college rugby for a while now. I ran a sevens series, a 3-tournament series back in 2012, and the response was 3 tournaments is too much. So we stick with the 1 tournament.
Okay. Yeah.
I would say the freedom that the clubs are allowed in the fall is hugely beneficial. We have to show up for games that are scheduled by the conference, and if you stress clubs in the fall, if you force teams who may or may not have the resources to show up for 8 months out of the year instead of 4, all you're really doing is touching on what both of these guys said. You're making them play games that don't really matter. You're not giving them the freedom to build in the way that they want to build. So I absolutely like the idea of a mostly free fall. And I love rugby. I'd like another tournament, but I can understand why we're only at 1, and I'm not going to complain about the 1. We'll just go to it and have fun.
Well, so speaking of freedom of choice, I want to change a little bit here to go to our thoughts on USA Rugby versus NCR. Bit of a big divide amongst college rugby in the United States right now, and so to my knowledge, we've played in both tournaments, and especially as it builds into what we're trying to achieve and trying to play at the national level when we play outside of Florida. That choice can have implications. I think we're eligible to play in both if you pay dues to both unions. So the CRAA being USA Rugby and CRCs being NCR. What are your thoughts on where teams in Florida should play, or should each team have their own choice? Kirk, I cut you off, so I'll let you start.
Yeah, we had this conversation a while back. NCR is mostly fall-based 15, spring-based 7s, and that's not the macro schedule we decided on. I also think personally that the NCR split away because they're upset that USA Rugby spent their money. Rightfully so, they should be upset, but I don't think spinning off and creating their own organization is like the right way to go. I also think the other thing that happened is when you go play at the CRCs, like referees are going to start getting penalized. There's that whole, like as a fellow ref, there's some stuff coming down the pike from USA Rugby going to use referees as leverage to in this argument. So I'm not a huge fan of the NCR split. I've told them that myself. I think they should be working with USA Rugby, not working against them. But they have their right to do what they want to do. It's cool what they're doing. I've heard a lot of positive feedback about NCR being much more responsive than USA Rugby. But the issue that we decided on was that the macro schedule just didn't fit with us. Because how are we going to be playing competitive 15s in the fall? Like, imagine if you had to play 7 or 8 games this fall and hurricanes came and you can't reschedule. What are you supposed to do? So I think by having this freedom of the fall 15s, the fall preseason, you do whatever you want. It helps with the hurricane season and all that type of stuff we do.
Andy, what are your thoughts?
For me, so what I think we just need to do is make the FCC something that teams in Florida don't want to leave. I don't think we should tell teams what they can do or they can't if they want to join the NCR, if they want to stay in USA Rugby, but make it so they want to stay with us and not split off on their own.
Okay. Let's talk quickly about postseason. I'm going to ask Kirk, as he's laughing, just to explain what is the current situation of what a postseason looks like and what are the options. And I'm just saying this because before the FCC, we used to have the teams in the different conferences, they would advance within the conference, right, to a national title, which you can agree that is a good thing to have or not a good thing. Just thinking of how much money you have to raise, it may seem like ridiculous, but we had that. Now, right now, if you can, Kirk, quickly explain what we have and what would be the options and the other candidates.
So, from a sevens perspective, the champion of the sevens has the opportunity to go play at the CRC and at the CRAA sevens nationals. So they qualify for both of those. And then for the 15s, we have a postseason play, which last year they went and played a bowl game against NorCal Conference. Now there's more conferences coming into the D1AA CRAA rank, so there'll be more potential opponents for bowl games. Now, yes, did there used to be a nationals? Yes, there did. But one of the issues with nationals is that you had to have your competitive season wrapped up by the first or second weekend of March. And guess when the best time to play rugby is in Florida? End of March and into April. So this is one of the drawbacks about a quote unquote nationals, because we're D1AA, right? There's 9 or 10 national championships in college, 6 in Division I. There's so many. What does it even mean? So for me, the bowl game idea is much more of a better way to accomplish a postseason play, because we got it where our top 2 teams in Florida both qualified for a bowl game in Houston, which was hosted at the CRAA finals in Houston last year. And they both played NorCal teams. Now this year, there could be more options because there's more teams coming into D1AA, more conferences coming into D1AA.
Andy, about the postseason?
I honestly don't know. I just started college rugby last year, so I still haven't seen how it all works. From what we experienced last year, so we won D2, and the league never told us that we were able to go to a D2 national championship. We later found out that we were able to do it. So I think we just have to be clear on those opportunities with all the teams in Florida rugby.
Okay.
So I think American collegiate sports fans are familiar with a bowl system, and that system was widely accepted as good for a long time, and it fits our needs as a sorry to say it, but a slightly obscure non-mainstream sport. The bowl setup, those bowl games that can be given more or less weight, fits our system pretty well. To get a get a national tournament, like a truly one national tournament, to choose when in the year you would want to do that, dude, that's why we have 6 or 7 already. So bowl games, as much as I hate to admit, because I like the idea of a one loss go home tournament to crown a champion, I don't think our geographically widespread nation and our lack of efficient upper level management in our sport, I don't think that's ever going to work out for a great tournament. That's not true. For the next, in the short term future, the next few years, it's not in the cards. If things change over time, we could do it. But for right now, I think the only feasible option for high quality, semi-accessible postseason games to test yourself after you've done your regional stuff is a bowl system.
Maybe we can have one here. Huh? What do you think?
I think that
we can talk to the Sharks and, combine a ball game with one of their games.
That's a good idea, Charlie.
In the nice stadium they're going to have.
Now, you won't look in the future. Once our top division goes D1A, now we're talking. Now they can go and compete in the D1A postseason. Now, because that one is is consecutive weekends that starts in April. But that's expensive because you have to take flights and you got to be performing at a really high level because those D1A teams are good.
Charlie, do you mind if I chime in?
Please.
Of course not.
So hopefully you guys are aware, but right now the position is college VP, which is all men and women. And a lot of this conversation, I think most of it has applied to mostly the men. But there is a bylaw change proposed to separate the positions. Yeah, but
give us 2.
Just in case that doesn't happen, I want to make sure that you guys have the college women in mind. There is a chance it could not be voted to go that way. And just want to make sure that you guys have the women in mind because honestly, they are, I think Kirk mentioned it earlier, their needs and what's going on right now is so different compared to the college men. So I just want to make sure that they're not an afterthought to you guys. They need some serious help and hopefully you guys have the gung-ho for them if the position gets split, and hopefully maybe you guys will run for one of those also. And we do have James also, but just want to make sure that's on your radar.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Thank you,
Yep.
Jesse. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
James could not make it because he would be the one for the, I think it's going to get approved. I don't see why would the union not, the membership say, no.
We always make perfect decisions in Florida rugby, Charlie. What are you talking about?
You never know. But something that I talked about before you 3 got on was that when I talked to the college women, the ones that had a really good team have a great relationship with their college men. So something that I think would be great to work on regardless is encouraging all the college men's teams to really try and support the college women. It works on the senior level. It's going to work on the college level. Having a supportive men's side for the women's side at any level is so big. And just simple things like communicating, inviting each other to events and supporting each other on the sideline, it goes both ways. So that's just something for you guys to keep in mind.
Trying to align the schedules. I mean, it only makes sense if you can have one day of a women's and a men's game at the same place. That's really awesome.
You definitely highlighted I appreciate the way you did that. But to be honest, with the risk of sounding I'm absolutely going to vote that we have 2 vice presidents so that we can have someone focus on the women's game. I'm not going to sit here and say that I would be able to devote the same kind of passion and attention to the women's game that I do the men's. I would absolutely do my best and would not treat them as an afterthought. But I will be voicing my opinion that they should have their own spearhead and leader. And I absolutely agree. And in my experience, I've always tried to help coordinate with the women's teams in town. And playing in Arkansas and Little Rock, the Little Rock women's team historically is better than the men. So we benefited from that partnership in the opposite way. So I thank you for speaking up on that. And I like it. I don't have any real great answers to those concerns right now, though.
Yeah, so it seems like we have a lot of agreement about how to the direction that we want to go, and the actions that we can take. What's something that separates you from the other candidates when teams are going to vote next week at the AGM? Let's go left to right on my screen. So Matt, you want to start?
Yeah. What separates me from everybody else? Hopefully we're all a bunch of motivated, passionate rugby guys and women, men and women. They want to help. So there shouldn't be a lot that separates us. Kirk probably trumps me in experience, but I've been around the game a long time and I've seen it. I would say the thing that separates me is my beginning as a obscure American athlete. I didn't move into this realm with vast rugby experience. I carpooled to my first games. By the end of my college career, we were flying to our games and we were playing against Cal and BYU and the top teams in the country. So the unique viewpoint that I can bring to the table is watching a team and a little bit of the sport grow from the grassroots. But we've all kind of seen that. But I feel like that's a strength. Maybe not sets me apart, but definitely something I can draw from.
Awesome. Kirk, what sets you apart?
I'm not an active coach. So, coaching takes up a lot of time. I am actually a referee. I referee out here in California. I actually get to talk to other teams and stuff like that. So I get a pretty wide, broad perspective on colleges, not just in Florida. I helped in Florida for quite some time. Matt is right. Matt played for Arkansas State, a really good program out there in Arkansas. And I actually think it's a wonderful lesson that we should be careful of. Like, we don't want, like, the reason I got involved is because I wanted to create a whole conference that can go Division I, right? Like, I care about Florida State, obviously, but Florida State can't go and be the top dog all by themselves, because then they're the next Arkansas State. They're geographically isolated. They're really, they've got the most expensive travel on a yearly basis. And so the best way to take care of Florida State is to make the entire ecosystem around them stronger. That's why I do what I do. And so I actually also believe that, I don't believe in the zero-sum game. I believe what is good for FAU, which is good for St. Thomas, is good for Florida State, is good for everyone else. Like, rising tide lifts all boats. But we all got to see that we're not competitors. We're actually coworkers. We actually work together in these types of stuff, and that we can build the sport together. So what makes me different? I'm not a coach. Currently, I was for quite some time.
Awesome. And Andy?
So for me, I think that what sets me apart is that I have experience in a better rugby nation per se. So I started my rugby days in Argentina and how clubs around there work. So I feel like I can bring in some ideas that might not be used here, as well as also I'm younger, so I might have some ideas that are not the same as you because you've already been in the system for quite some time. So I just think it's a new perspective than maybe the other candidates.
All right, very good. So I think that sounds like a good discussion for the people watching online, to give them some intro as to who you are and what your thoughts are. Charlie, you want to bring in our next guest, because we're all talking about new rugby programs.
Yeah, we just want to bring him for a few minutes. You guys, please stay. This is Khaled. Well, I'm going to let him introduce himself.
That means Charlie can't pronounce his name.
He is responsible of the new program in the Millennia Atlantic University. Did I get that good?
Yeah, you got it perfect.
Yeah, because he's from Argentina, so I would just call him El Turco. That would be the way of addressing him. So
yeah, perfect. Thank you, Charlie. So yeah, a little bit about myself. I used to play in Miami Rugby. I'm still playing over there, and this year we started with the University of Millennia in Doral, the rugby program. We're hoping to be this year, competing to D2 or whatever they need us. From speaking in, from the university, we want to give all the support and everything you need from us. It's gonna be there, and yeah, hoping to get in. I was hearing all the conversations. I see a lot of people that they want to help, with different opinions and everything, but that's a good thing that we have like different opinions from a lot of people and not like maybe just one or two ideas. So it's great that there's a lot of communication, and especially from you, Charlie, that you're bringing these people to talk with everyone.
Let me ask you quickly. Your university is actually, if I did not understand incorrectly, you are giving scholarships to play rugby, right?
So yeah, we have different programs for the domestic and for the internationals. There are gonna be many Argentinians coming probably because that's my string over there. But yeah, we have a scholarship programs to help the students.
But these are like sort of full scholarships. They are substantial.
No, there are standard scholarships, depending on the player's profile, depending on the academics positions, rugby positions that we're needing. So it's a mix about everything. But yeah, it's not a full scholarship.
Yeah, and then I'm not terribly familiar with MAU. Where is it, and how big is the school?
So the MAU is located at Doral on 36th Street.
Miami-Dade.
Miami-Dade sounds good.
yeah, it's still a Miami-Dade, and it's a university with about 1,000 students. Actually, we're bringing other sports. Rugby, soccer, women's volleyball, men's baseball, tennis, men and women. So it's a big program.
We don't care about all those sports. We just care about
But yeah, rugby is the most important one here.
Okay.
Charlie's got short patience.
Okay, and you are confident that you're gonna be. You don't have a team right now, like a full team, but you are already having some practices, correct?
Yes. So I have already players here to study for the fall semester, and the rest of them, they're coming in January. I'm continue recruiting and everything, so we can have a bigger team to play, because injuries here in rugby, that's something that happens a lot. So that's my main focus as of the moment.
Okay, great. Really nice. Awesome.
Charlie, we have another team. Don't have a guest on the pod today, but Embry-Riddle starting back up again as well.
Correct.
So they were in the fold a couple of years ago, looking at fielding a team again this year.
Well, they were in the fold a while ago, I think, not a couple of years.
Yeah, a little while ago. You're old, Charlie.
Yeah. I spoke with Brendan Hargrave, the president of the rugby club, and they already have a team. They actually played a game in Tennessee. Not sure in what conditions, but they did play a game already. So they have like 25 players at practice. So 2 more teams, that would be awesome. Awesome way to start the season if everything falls into place. Okay, I want to thank everybody for coming to the podcast on a Friday night. I just did this for Kirk, just disclosure. And looking forward to see everybody at the AGM. And let's hope we have a great season like we had last year.
Thank you.
Sounds good, Charlie. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
See you guys.
Thanks, Charlie.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I got everybody out. It's a manual process. I can't take everybody out right away. Okay, Tom. Well, I think we got a good sense of the candidates to some extent, right?
Good enough. I learned something. Hadn't talked to some of those folks in a couple of years, but for a few of them, some of them in my ear all last season. You know, the trials and tribulations of a referee, but should be good. I think it's good because this is another contested election. Normally, these things put it up for a vote. There's one candidate talked into running 6 hours before, and they get the nomination by default. So it's good that we have some competition. It's good that we've seen some different perspectives, and the teams are going to have the ability to vote on who they want to represent them.
Absolutely, yes. And I think it's always great for people to be able to see the person, because if not, many times it even happens to me. It's just a name, right? Oh, it's a name, and you don't really know the person, and that's why going to the AGMs. I'm
going to go. I've never been to one.
Are you going to go?
Been to one back. Yeah, I'm going to go.
You want to ref it? You want to be in the middle?
I'll bring the whistle just in case.
Bring a whistle and bring your cards. We're going to need those cards. Bring the red ones. Hey, well, yeah, so we'll probably be back with the podcast after that AGM.
Yeah, AGM is next weekend, next Saturday.
Next week. Yeah, next Saturday.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you very much, Tom, for your time. And
of course, thank you, Charlie.
And we'll see everybody soon. Thank you very much. And now is when I play the
outro.